Good evening, fellow Plexers. Tonight's video is going to answer a question for Joel out of the Plexaholics group, who wants to know if there's any resource for someone starting out with a 6-year-old Dell computer who wants to provide Plex just for the family and be prepared for growing bigger and getting better storage over 6 months. Well, Joel, Plex is freaking addictive. If you think you'll be getting better storage in 6 months and that will be the end of it, dream on, buddy. I have 20 hard drives in 20 slots, all in Synology boxes. 2 different Synology NAS units with a 5-bay expansion unit for each. One for Plex, one for a full backup of Plex. So first off, I want to give props to Craig. He gave you some good advice, and I followed a similar path. I started with a Synology NAS, went to an expansion unit, bought another Synology NAS because I screwed everything up on the first one, and I wanted to keep that up for my friends and family. And I slowly rebuilt things to perfection on the newer Synology NAS, and then switched everybody over and made the old one a dedicated backup unit that hopefully will eventually be off-site. Now, Craig switched to Unraid, and I like Unraid myself because my Synology DS1520 Plus NAS only had a 9th gen Celeron with a pretty decent iGPU in it, and I wanted something faster. I used Unraid on a little Intel branded 11th gen NUC with a mobile version of an i5 processor in it and the Iris Xe iGPU. I installed Unraid on that little system as a Docker host only and moved my Plex container over to it without losing any metadata to get that really fast iGPU, and it points back at the media on my Synology NAS. So what I want to stress to you is it doesn't really matter where you start. It almost doesn't matter what hardware you start with. But if you have a 6-year-old computer, chances are being 2025, that's from 2019, and it's got a 9th gen Intel processor in it. And the sweet spot for economical servers is an 8th through 10th gen Intel processor with an iGPU. Most of all the processors in that line have the UHD graphics 630 iGPU in them. Some higher end systems will have a different iGPU, but that's a good iGPU. It's pretty comparable to what's in my newer Synology NAS. So the most important thing at this point isn't to buy the right hardware, because Plex server is portable. You can move it any place you want. The best guide is Plex's own support articles. This group, Plexaholics, is a pretty knowledgeable group. You'll get some wrong answers, but you'll get many, 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 many right answers. Just like Craig gave you a really good answer. Now, I used to be a member of a different large Plex group. It's the second largest Facebook group. I left that due to some differences with the support staff, but that group has an excellent and knowledgeable moderator whose first name is Benjamin. I would seek that group out if you end up with a QNAP NAS. He owns a QNAP NAS himself. I can help you with a Synology NAS. I can help you with Unraid. A lot of people in the group can help you with Unraid. And I would source myself as a pretty knowledgeable resource also. So what I want to talk about first is the support articles from Plex. support.plex.tv/articles. It's got everything you could want. So while you're watching this video, bookmark some of these pages. There's 3 support articles to tell you everything you want to know about prepping the folder and file structure for a movie library, naming and organizing your movie files. It basically tells you that you need one media folder with subfolders in it for each type of Plex library content. I'm going to expand on that in a little bit. And you name according to Plex's convention. Basically, it comes down to the source ID information, which tells us that Plex looks for naming from either IMDb or TMDb as the two main database sources. So each of these examples is telling you how to use the source ID from each database in the file name. And you can't deviate. So it has to be a proper movie name with the year, and that's listed the same way for 99.9% of the movies at both TMDb and IMDb. I prefer TMDb. So that's easy. You can just copy and paste this, and this will be in the URL of any movie you look up. So let's go to TMDB. Let's just pick something they're showcasing. That's my movie tonight. This is the number right here. And if we do the same thing at IMDb, look to the URL again, and the database number is always the TT number. So if we go back here, you'll see that it's in curly braces, TMDB-272, IMDB-TT with the rest of the number. It's really easy. It's a copy and paste for the folder name. So you can just copy that. That's the folder name. Now this is a little bit more difficult. You can copy this, but then you have to add the parentheses to the year. This you can just copy directly. One reason I prefer the movie database. And then if you notice, it's the same for the movie. So here's the movie folder with a database number formatted properly, and it's the same movie name here. This is optional. You don't have to use the source ID again. I do for the movie folder or the movie file. That's a basic name. Now a TV well, let's not jump to the TV yet. Let's finish this up. This is an important article, multi-version movies. This allows you to put multiple versions of a movie in the same movie folder in case you wanted to, say, put regular 1080p media, and maybe this one would be named 4K instead of SD if you wanted two versions of the movie in the library. Naming this way, this is called versioning. Plex is supposed to pick the one that will play the best for the client that's looking to play the movie based on available bandwidth. Doesn't always work. Lots of people like myself keep our 4K movie libraries separate and don't share them remotely. A Plex Pass comes in handy for hardware accelerated transcoding, and also this feature, multiple editions. So this is a valuable article. So down here you see Final Cut and Director's Cut. That's based on edition naming, which a Plex Pass will unlock. Basically, well, this isn't a good example. Let's find another one. Basically, you have the movie folder, and this one's putting the director's cut in the folder name. It's not how I do it. I just have the regular movie folder name plus the source ID, and then I use edition naming like this, where it's in curly braces, edition dash director's cut, and the curly braces. So my files are named just like this with some extra information in it. Hardware accelerated transcoding, which takes relief off your CPU to offload the transcoding to the very efficient GPU, NVIDIA GPU, or Intel iGPU, is probably the biggest Plex Pass feature, and this edition naming is probably the second best feature. Okay, so let's get into naming and organizing a TV show. Let me drop down. I probably went right by it. There's a source ID for TV shows too, and it's TMDB and TVDB, and I prefer TVDB. Okay, it's right here. So this would be the show name. So again, TMDB is one of the two databases you can use. Let me just find a TV show. So again, the database name is right here. So this would be the show name. You'd copy that, and then you'd do a space, curly brace, TMDB dash 108978, and curly brace. That would be your folder name, and then you could copy that to be the beginning of the episode name. And then shows are named, or the actual episodes are named. Let's see. All my videos are cold, so sometimes I get lost in my own videos. Okay, so this is showing the folder name. And then you put a season folder, season 01, season 02. Then you reuse the show name for this part of the episode name. Then it's a space dash space as a separator before the season and episode coding, which is always S01E01, season 1, episode 1. Space dash space, and then you can, as an optional thing, add the episode name. That's the most basic compliant TV show episode name, and this shows the whole structure. Now you could also use TVDB as a source ID. I don't use either. I just name from TVDB. And let's open that up next. Now under Chrome, there's a lot of ads in this. But I was convinced by Daniel, our moderator, to switch to uBlock from AdBlock, and I don't have any issues anymore. So let's just scroll down, find a series. Let's do Breaking Bad. Now TMDB is legal, but for episodes, they only have aired ordering. And that doesn't help people who rip media from DVDs for TV shows. They're very strict. If an episode didn't air on a network or on a cable network, it's not listed as an episode. So TVDB is different. And Plex can work with their differences. And I don't know why I'm not opening. Right back. Let me figure this out. All right, I'm back with you. So TVDB gives you alternate ordering. So if we click into the season, you'll see there's aired ordering just like TMDB, and here's an alternate DVD ordering. So if you're ripping your own media with Make MKV, it's going to come off in the order listed here. So let's say season 1 and season 2 is 7 and 13 episodes. Sometimes you'll see the DVD order even has a different listing for the number of episodes. So if we look here, if say season 1 had 2 discs that made that up, 3 and 4 episodes on each disc, well, you're guaranteed that the first 3 that comes off the first disc is 1 through 3, and then the other 4 that come off the second disc will be 1 through 4. So it's pretty easy to know what's what without having to start up a ripped file to see if it is the episode you're looking for. And then the Plex library for a TV show can be set to alternatively pull episode ordering from TVDB, which is how I set it up right from the very beginning. So a lot of people just use TMDB for everything. A lot of people use IMDb for movies. I use TMDB for movies and TVDB for TV shows. And let's jump back to the movies for a second. The reason I like to name from TMDB for movies is you can pull collections automatically for collections listed in this database. So we'll go to Back to the Future and we'll slide down, view the collection, and here's 3 movies listed. There is artwork for this. If I slide down, do I have a choice of other artwork? Posters. There's 37 different posters for this collection that you can change to besides the default one. And then a Plex movie library has the option of creating these. It's not enabled by default. And if you want to create these automatically, you have a choice of 1, 2, 3, or 4 movies. If it's set to 1, as soon as you add one of these movies to your server, the collection gets created. I set this to 2, so the collection won't be created until I have at least 2 movies on the server. So IMDb doesn't have anything like this for Plex to pull metadata from, so I just use TVDB or TMDB, and as you can see, they have multiple posters. If for some reason a poster doesn't come through with Plex, but everything else does, you can come here, manually grab a poster, and upload it to the movie. All right, so that is the setup for where to get the knowledge. Don't trust what anybody says unless it's me, and I can guarantee it comes from one of these support articles. I can't even trust myself all the time. Sometimes I come here to double check what I think I know. And occasionally I don't know what I'm talking about because I've forgotten what I should know already. Okay, so the next bit of advice I can give you is good folder structure starting right off. So I'm on my older Synology NAS at the DS1019 Plus. It has, I don't know if it's a 7th, I think it's a 7th gen Celeron processor. It does have an iGPU that's kind of just barely capable. If you came across one for free, I'd recommend using it, but I wouldn't spend a lot of money on a Synology NAS with the 7th gen Celeron. I'd want at least the 9th gen like many of the Plus models have from 2020 on. So anyway, the whole key is this is rated storage. On this NAS, I'm running 10 drives across the main unit and the 5-bay expansion unit, and it's set up for 2-drive redundancy. What that means is I can have 2 drives fail at the same time, and I won't lose any data. I will have to order replacements to then have them initialized into the array, but I just won't lose any data. So this is mainly the backup NAS, but I do have a test server installed here, and I have one shared media folder, lowercase, no spaces. Inside this is where I do something additional to what Plex recommends. Remember that article, the support article that said movie, TV, and music for library folders? Well, I have sort folders for everything except for a movie or a music library. Chances are you're not going to have multiple music libraries. You're just going to have one big one. But you may have multiple TV show libraries. This is just a scratch folder to hold some examples I've used for previous videos. But so I have a main TV show library. Here's a kids one. Here's one dedicated just to DVRing. And here's one dedicated to anime. So once you go into one, here's some public domain episodes in their show folders that I could actually show on YouTube to show how a subtitle works. Well, so this is named from TVDB with a year added. Season 01. Again, the same folder name here, that space dash space, SO1 EO1. I like to have it caps. You can have it lowercase. Space dash space, the episode name, and then the support article for TV shows says you can put extra information inside of brackets that will be ignored by Plex's TV show scanner. So I put some media characteristics in this section, and I actually have an expression with a utility named FileBot, which it renames for Plex, and my custom expression does all this. So the reason this structure is important is it lets you grow the library in a nested way. So as you're adding structure, you click into the shared media library. If you're adding a documentary and it's a separate library, you click into the movie sort folder and you put it in the movie-documentary library. This way, if you have a lot of libraries, maybe you have a concert library, and you'd be surprised how many concerts are listed as movies at IMDb or TMDb, and how many are released on Blu-ray. And if they're released on Blu-ray or DVD, it means they're floating around in the ether also. And maybe your movie library is going to grow to 4,000 or 5,000 strong, but maybe you've got a concert library like I do with a couple hundred titles in it. Well, better to have that as a separate library so those 200 concert movies don't get lost in a sea of 5,000 or 6,000 regular movies. This is way down the road. Same with documentaries, same with kids stuff. So if you have someone who really likes your documentary library and you've got 400 documentaries and 5,000 main movies, well, they're not going to know what you have unless you make a collection. It's easier just to have a separate library, and any friend or family that doesn't care about documentaries can simply unpin that library and not see it. And if you've got a friend or two who loves documentaries or who loves your concerts, not only can they keep those libraries pinned, but they can bring them up higher on the client menu to keep track of what you add to it. So I like this nested structure. Now I could have these multiple libraries all at this one level. So you could be in your shared media folder and you could have all the different individual libraries here. And if you named them smart, like movie dash main, or let's say movie dash main, movie dash kids, movie dash documentary, movie dash concerts, they would be sorted pretty decently. I just like this nested folder structure. Down the road, if you want to add an automated setup through Usenet or trackers, I think it's safer to say trackers than to say out the TOR word. This would be the acquisition folder, and this is the example of what it would be for a Usenet setup. I don't have anything set up like that. I just have the folder as an example. And if you were using a Synology NAS, a QNAP NAS, an Unraid self-installed NAS system, for that type of a setup, you want to achieve atomic moves. And you can test this at home. Take a 50 gig 4K movie file and copy it from one hard drive to another. And you can go make a cup of coffee and maybe mow half the lawn before that finishes, because that's really a copy and delete function instead of a copy and paste. Now, if you take a large file like this one, this is 89 gigabytes, I'm going to cut it and I'm going to move it into, well, right here, just the root of my shared folder. It's there instantly. Now, if I take it, cut it, and I put it in this other shared folder, this is where I've got a lot of time on my hands, because now it's a copy and delete instead of just a copy and paste. So this is going to take 24 minutes to move because it has to be recreated on the new shared folder. Of course, I'll stop that. So it still exists in its regular location, so I can delete the partial copy and go back into here and put it where it belongs. Cut. And I can paste it right back into this folder, and you see it's instantaneous. So that is the benefit of what the trash guides calls an atomic or an instant move. And that's the guide to follow. That's about the only guide to follow besides maybe some of my videos for that sort of a setup. And they come out and tell you that most Docker setup guides for all the programs involved don't give people the right path statements, and it encourages people to create multiple shared folders. So now we're back at the root level. Here's that shared folder. Some of those container guides for the different services tell you to create a shared folder for movies, a shared folder for TV shows, a shared folder for music, and then a separate shared folder for your sub NZBD folder. Some of the ones even tell you to put media into the Docker folder. As you can see, this is where the Plex Docker application lives. And I don't have anything configured, but these are the trash guide programs. You do not want to put a Plex TV show library in this folder. This is for configuration only. No media should ever be in a subfolder of the Docker shared folder. But there's a guide I like. His instructions are great for a Synology NAS, but his path statements are screwy, and it just tells me he doesn't run any of this himself. But he can help you get the container installed as long as you know enough to fix his bad path statements. Okay, so this structure is probably the most important thing. And now I got to jump back because I forgot to mention something. This is a mistake I made early on. You have to learn about subtitles. And this is on-demand subtitles, which is something you don't want to get involved with. Every Plex client device, through a partnership with Open Subtitles, can search for a subtitle if the server owner doesn't have one. Well, you should really have one, and this is the local subtitle guide. If you get media and it has a subtitle, don't delete it, learn how to name it properly. And basically, however the movie's named, if you have an English subtitle, it would be the same name as the movie with a .en or a .eng, which I prefer, .srt. This is a type of subtitle. There's other subtitle types also. And I gotta go up, I guess, to find it. So this is probably the best type. I've never seen that in the wild. I do have some of these types embedded, and there is VOSUB and PGS, and up until recently they would cause a transcode, but they don't always do that now. But the most common, if you're searching for a subtitle because media is missing one, all the subtitle sites are usually SRT subtitles. So I'm running Pop OS, and I've got things set up in a different type of organization. I create a lot of web apps out of websites. So as you see, I've got a subtitle folder, and I can access these. I've made a web app after every type of subtitle site there is. So you can search for subtitles here. So if I went in here to the movie, lots of times you'll see a time here. So if you've got a version that's a minute 31 and 19 seconds, or I'm sorry, an hour, 31 minutes and 19 seconds, this is going to match the movie no matter whether you've got a 720p, a 1080p, or a 4K. It's the runtime you have to worry about. So sometimes it takes checking a few different subs to find the right one, but you definitely want to have subtitles. And the main thing is there's 3 types of English subtitles. Forced is probably the most important. That's forced foreign audio or foreign language. So if a movie has 5 scenes, short scenes that they speak Russian or French or German dialogue, those subtitles are in the forced subtitle file. The SDH is the hearing impaired. So again, if the movie is named this way, you name the subtitle the same way with a .eng or a .en, and then a dot either forced or SDH, and the plain subtitle is just labeled .eng with whatever extension the subtitle is in. And then you can set your server up to automatically load forced subtitles for everybody. So this is the real kicker. Nobody wants to watch a movie and not see dialogue for foreign audio. So at the very least, you should have the forced subtitle. But if you're getting the forced subtitle when it's not included with however you found the movie, you might as well get the hearing impaired. And if you want to leave one out, leave the default one. It's probably better to have the hearing impaired with the extra context over the default one. But that's your personal choice. But you actually must have the forced subtitle. Okay, so now we can talk about the type of server you want to start with and why it really doesn't matter. I would practice all the naming things and just pick yourself up something with an 8th gen system. Now you mentioned having a Dell, a 6-year-old. It's probably an Optiplex, right? If it is, these are great little systems. Unfortunately, the Micro, well, I used to have one, has one NVMe slot and one spot for a 2.5-inch SATA drive. That can make a good little Plex server with some USB media. HP ProDesks are nice little systems too. Our moderator Daniel runs his Plex server off, I think it's a 9th gen. That's just like one of my bench systems. Let's see a picture that looks more modern. It's a G600, I think. Okay, that's the Micro one. I'm not sure if they really call it a Micro. All right, so I picked up one with a i5-9500, a 9th gen CPU, and one with a 8th gen i5. I forget the model number. Is it an 8100T maybe? $75 locally, each with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and they each had a tiny 256 gigabyte no-name SSD in it. Well, if you unplug the DVD on these, so this tray lifts out. This is a little bit different, and underneath here is a NVMe slot, and underneath here are 3 SATA ports. Well, you could ditch the rusty hard drive and you could put some laptop hard drives in this case, rusty ones, and 3 will stack up here. There's no way to mount them, but if you know they're in there loose, you're not going to tip it on its side. So this could hold 3 large laptop drives, maybe 3-4 terabyte ones, and the operating system could be on a NVMe drive. You could use Windows, you could use Linux, you could even use Unraid on this. Make the NVMe drive a single cache drive, and then you could have 2 4 terabyte laptop size drives as your data drives, and then one more as a parity drive to have RAID-like redundancy for this. Or you could use a 4 terabyte as a data and a 4 terabyte as the parity. And the third one could have a 2.5-inch SSD to then make a redundant cache pool with the NVMe drive to have redundancy there too. There's just a lot of options with this. Is especially a great little small computer because you can fit 3 small drives in it plus the NVMe boot drive. So that's the last thing I want to talk about. And that involves my own YouTube channel. I make custom support videos for people and I have a lot of content. Let me type Windows. I'm not a Windows guy. I gave it up a long time ago. But I have done some videos under Windows, and I have a new Windows 11 install for someone. Where is the one where I've moved? Let me search by move. I was under the impression you couldn't move a Windows install to Linux or to a Docker container, which is also Linux, because the registry was involved. But I proved that wrong. I moved a working test Plex server from Windows 11, and I had created a couple of custom collections and added custom metadata, and it was pretty easy to move to a Synology NAS. And I don't know if I moved it to the NAS as a bare metal container install or if I put it into a Docker container, but it doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. And I didn't lose any custom metadata. So you can start out with Windows, and when you want to move to a NAS, which is just going to be Linux, you can put it into a Docker container like a lot of us run it without any problem. So I have a video showing you how to do that. So I've got the new user with Windows. I also have one with Ubuntu. Let's show all. I show transcoding test. Okay, so I have this Ubuntu 24.04 install as a snap package. And then I have this, all the tools you need for a healthy server in an Ubuntu install. But all the programs I showcase are all available under Windows and the Mac OS too. They all work the same way no matter what OS you're in. So this tutorial is really for anybody running a Mac or Windows or Linux to learn the common tools we all use. And I will only showcase a Plex tool or a Plex utility if it's available to everyone. It's got to be available under Windows, Mac, and Linux like I use. I'm just not interested in showcasing something that people like myself can't run. I mean, I can spin up Windows on something to showcase DVD Fab, but I can't use it myself, so I'm not going to show it on my channel. Make MKV is the software you use to rip a DVD or a Blu-ray. Music Brains Picard is indispensable to fix music tags or to simply check tags before you add an album to a Plex music library. MKV Toolnix can adjust the contents of a media container file, and don't let the name fool you. It can unzip an MKV file or an MP4 file and adjust the contents. And I have videos on that. And Handbrake is what you can use to convert a RIP to a different resolution. And mostly you're going to use this if you're ripping a Blu-ray. DVDs are 480p, a Blu-ray is 1080p, and a UHD Blu-ray is 4K. So, if you rip a 1080p Blu-ray, you may end up with a file that is quite large, and it could be, the megabits per second could be higher than you want. I run smaller file sizes with a conservative megabits per second. So one of my movies might be 2.5 gigs to 3 gigs in size, and the bit rate might be 3 to 5 megabits per second. Most of my TV show episodes have a higher bit rate, but they're all coming in the H.265 format, where all my movies are H.264, unless I can't find it, and then it's an H.265 version. H.264 is compatible across almost every Plex client app, but we're entering the day and age where H.265 basically is too. So anyway, long story short, Handbrake can fix issues inside the container file. It's basically something that unzips it, you change some parameters, zip it back up quickly, and Handbrake shrinks files. And there's some automated ways to do that too once you get to the NAS level. So basically, I have a video for everything when you want to get remote access enabled. I'll show you how to port forward. If you're not sure about transcoding, I've got videos on that. I helped the gentleman gain hardware accelerated transcoding, and I have this standalone video that's fairly recent where I go through showing how well Plex transcodes off from various iGPUs or only the CPU if you don't have a Plex pass. And I think I showcased like 5 different Plex servers under this. So I'm not a pro YouTuber, but I'm a pretty good resource for a new user. All right, so I think this is getting long enough. It's 41 minutes already. And I can't stress enough. Start with a good foundation. Start with a media folder that can eventually become a shared media folder. And because you're eventually going to be into the Linux world with the NAS, we'll follow Matt Peterson's advice from the Dockerholics Facebook group. Matt's a member of this group. No uppercase letters and no spaces, which is why you see everything named this way until you get to the level of Plex Media. Now I return to cases and spaces. So this structure, lock that in early. And then the second thing to do is the main support article. You can find anything, but there's 3 articles on movies. The main one, the versioning one, multi-version movies, the edition one, which is a Plex Pass requirement, the single one on TV show naming and organizing, and understanding local subtitles and how to name them and why you should have them. And almost any video I help somebody with, I'm into the web app. Let's not let this confuse you. I always have multiple servers running, my main one and test ones. And I do a lot of troubleshooting for people by using my test server. I try to recreate their issue, then I do a video solve for them. This is a new server I just spun up for a really quick video today and a longer one yesterday. This Kazaa OS one is running on top of Ubuntu because it's a light type of Ubuntu install, and Plex is running in a Docker container. It's probably the easiest Docker container to set up, and I didn't know that until I put this together the other day. Unraid's pretty easy too. So the settings are easy. I show a lot of them. I show how to adjust library settings. You point to the media. Here's the advanced settings for the automatic subtitle creation that I talked about. I'm a firm believer that everybody should be pulling episode ordering from TVDB and using that. By default, it's set here. So now I'm just kind of goofing around. I think you get the idea. Start with almost any system, but learn all the fundamentals that you need to know, and that'll set you up best for the future. And if you're interested in redundant storage right off the bat with a Synology NAS like Craig started with, or like I still use, you want one with the older 9th gen Celeron processor. The current models are the DS224 Plus, which is limited. It's only 2 bays and it's not expandable. The 423 Plus also has the same processor, but that's not expandable either. Or you could do like I do. Buy a Synology NAS and not care about the iGPU, and get a little Intel mini computer or NUC to move the Plex container to have the media on the Synology NAS, or do like Craig did. Just start with a unraid install instead of moving to one. And I have videos on that too. I have 2 playlists. Let me go to the playlist. All right, so I have a playlist documenting what I've done with a Docker host only setup under Unraid. And then I have a playlist if someone was new to Plex and new to Unraid and wanted to create their first Plex server under Unraid. All right, this is it. This is way too long, but hopefully you'll think it has some good information. So happy Plexing, and let me know if you need any further assistance.